Thanks, Joko. We're joined now by the leader of UKIP, Nigel Farage. This is your motion. Why are you not in Strasbourg voting for it?
It wasn't actually. This was a Five Stars Italian motion. They were the guys that set this running. I put my name to it.
Yeah.
I was a bit shocked actually when I found out that some other people had signed up to the motion that perhaps I wouldn't have chosen. I'm here today, Andrew, because the immigration figures were out.
No, and we're going to talk. I promise you, we will talk about that.
And I've got, you know,
and we will talk about that, and we're going to do that. But
I felt my priority as leader of UKIP was to be in London for the immigration figures. I also didn't think this motion had a cat's chance in hell. I was quite surprised, actually, that the votes and the abstentions were nearly 200. I was surprised it was as high as that. But if you're going to put together a motion of confidence, if you put the French National Front in it, you're not going to get many votes.
Mr. Juncker's not out of the woods yet, though,
No.
is he? Because there will be an investigation into how Luxembourg orchestrated its tax arrangements at a time when he was Prime Minister.
Well, the odd thing is that, you know, only a few months ago he was approved as Commission President, and there were supposedly hearings, and none of this stuff came out. So I think there was actually quite a lot of anger in the Parliament, and his defence on Monday in this debate, frankly, was pathetic.
Which was?
Don't be nasty to me.
But you're always nasty to him.
Oh, I'm never nasty to him. And I didn't speak in the debate, okay, Andrew, either. But I mean, so it was a very weak defence of his position. What he was effectively saying was, we must stop people like me being allowed to exist.
All right, let's move on. Let me welcome viewers from Scotland. They've been watching First Minister's Questions in Holyrood. You've missed all of our coverage on Scotland, but you've probably had enough of that already. We're moving on to talk about immigration because new official figures show that there was a significant jump in the net migration to the UK in the year to June. The Office for National Statistics says it went up to 260,000 from 182,000. Home Secretary Theresa May has admitted that the government's now unlikely, and some would say impossible, to hit its target for reducing immigration. UKIP said that it's been a total failure. Here's our Adam.
Figures out today show that net migration to the UK was 209,000 in 2013, and the Office for National Statistics estimates it to have been 260,000 in the past 12 months. The coalition government promised to cut net migration to tens of thousands a year by the end of this parliament, but has failed to achieve its target. The coalition has had some success in bringing down net non-EU migration, which fell to 143,000 in 2013. But the new stats out today estimate it to be on the rise again, standing at 168,000 for the 12 months to June 2014. But it's been more difficult to curb the rise in immigration from within the EU, which has been growing since 2004. Last year, net EU migration was 123,000, the highest figure since 2007, and it's estimated to have been 142,000 in the 12 months to June 2014. David Cameron has been expected to make a big speech on Europe this week. He's expected to announce plans to limit EU workers' access to in-work tax credits.
Nigel Farage is still with us. We're joined by the Conservative MP, Mark Pritchard. So we could file this under T for total fail.
Well, I think we've got to look at what these people are doing here. And the vast majority, whether they be from outside the EU or from within the EU, are here contributing and making a real difference to society, whether they're a Hungarian heart surgeon in a London hospital or a
Sure, so why did you promise to cut them to the tens of thousands?
Or a Latvian fruit picker in Staffordshire
so why
or
did you promise to cut them?
Look, I think we've got to move away, all political parties, and start to look at the types of people that we need in the economy here.
Yeah, but I understand all that,
Yeah.
but let's just look, because I think if you wanted a good example of why people have had it with Westminster and with trust in politicians. It's a promise. No ifs, no buts, said the Prime Minister. We'll bring net migration down to the tens of thousands. It's actually higher now than it was when he came to power. You have to give some kind of apology or explanation for that.
Look, my personal view is whether it be red lines or caps or targets, often they're unhelpful in politics. What we've got to look at is what jobs these people are doing. Are they making a contribution to the economy?
You made that point, but you didn't say any of that in your manifesto. Your manifesto made the pledge I've just read out, and you have failed to deliver that. Pledge may be right or wrong, that's not for me to say, but you got elected on that pledge and you have failed to deliver.
Well, I know that farms in Shropshire want people out in their fields.
Did you put farms in Shropshire in your manifesto?
Well, I represent Shropshire farmers and all of my...
Manifesto?
Look, Andrew, I've said what I've said. I think that red lines, targets, caps, artificial caps are often unhelpful on these issues. What we've got to look at are whether these people are making a contribution, and the vast majority of people, whether from Europe or outside of Europe, are making a contribution. Now, I admit that the speed and scale of particularly EU migration has had an impact on communities, whether it be hospitals or housing, and that is why the Prime Minister is tackling the issue and is looking at in-work benefits and out-of-work benefits, and we'll have more detail when he gives that speech over the next few
Nigel
days.
Farage, I give you an open go. Do you want to kick the ball in the net?
Well, there are two separate issues here, aren't there? I mean, the primary issue is a promise was made in a manifesto that was actually an entirely dishonest promise, because in those days... Well, in those days, what Cameron was trying to do was to say that immigration and Europe were two separate issues. Now I think the penny's dropped with the great British public that actually it's one and the same thing. You cannot, it's pointless giving projections on figures. It's pointless estimating the number of primary school places. It's pointless estimating what healthcare you need if you have no control over the number of people coming into Britain. And that's because we have an open door to nearly 500 million people. And I would say to Mark, you know, you can argue and you can go along with the UCL study that says that, you know, the benefit of Eastern European migration is about 0.5% of our tax take over the course of the last 10 years. But the disbenefit is to millions of ordinary British families who've seen their wages compressed, who've seen their public services under massive strain.
Not massive, that's just massive.
And who've seen... Well, no, if you go to the east coast of England, for example...
There's a benefit, there's a net benefit to migration.
Well, if you go
and there's a big social benefit to migration. We're a much richer country for having all these immigrants. And I welcome these immigrants coming to our country. I'd like to see more people making a positive case for immigration. On the BBC News, just before this programme, you had just Nigel Farage...
And I agree with Nigel.
I mean, there's both of you have that opinion, and that's fine. And that opinion is actually very, very popular in London and in Westminster. But if you look at the surveys, if you ask people, do you think we should be able to control both the quantity and the quality of who comes to Britain? 7 or 8, actually, how you measure the quality is how Australia measures the quality, America and 190 other countries in the world. They choose who can come to their country. They don't allow people with criminal records, for argument's sake.
Whether it be in Essex, or whether it be in Shropshire, or whether it be in London, if you say to people, do you want us to take out of your grandmother's care home the Bulgarian worker, the Romanian worker? Do you want to remove from your local community the Polish dentist? Do you want to remove from those Shropshire fruit pickers fields the Latvian? What I say, and I think the Prime Minister will reiterate this hopefully in his speech, is we need to reset in fact, the intellectual case for EU migration. Intellectual case for EU migration, controlled EU migration, the emotional case for it, and of course recognising...
Can we be honest about this now? If you want to make the case for open-door mass immigration,
that's not what I'm saying, and you know
and you've just made the case and made it well.
No.
But please do not use the words EU and control in the same sentence.
You talk about open-door immigration. If you want open-door immigration...
Hold on, you can't talk over each other.
But my point is simple. Whether immigration is good or bad is separate to this point. My point is this. You cannot control the numbers that come if you're members of the European Union, period.
We can, and that is why, because you reduce the push and pull factors. We're doing that. That's what we're doing. We are doing that, and that's why the Prime Minister, I believe, will announce new policies in relation to out-of-work benefits and in-work benefits.
Can I just ask... No, I want to ask you a question. Sorry, Andrew. Because you're saying that if we tighten up on the welfare benefits that go to people who come to this country either to work or not to work, if we tighten up, that will reduce the number that comes. But since the argument overwhelmingly is that most people come here to work, at most what your suggestion can only be at the margins.
Absolutely.
Right, that is why...
Correct?
So, for example, if there are British people unprepared to work, we are undertaking welfare reforms to make sure that they do work in future.
But it will only be marginal.
This is the second point. That if we have people who want to work but don't have the skills, we are now upskilling people, reforming education in order that we have more people with the skills. It is not just a simple pull up the drawbridge or in or out of the country. It is having a holistic approach, a multi-layered approach of what is right for this country, what is right. You know, if we took Nigel's approach, for example, 15,000 Romanian students that are in universities up and down this land, if we removed all of those or deported them, whatever UKIP's policy is today, that would be a huge decrease in the local economy of many university towns and cities in this country.
Why are we now stopping doctors from New Zealand and engineers from India coming into Britain because we have an open door to 500 million people and we've closed our backs on the rest of the world. And I want to have an ethical immigration policy where we don't discriminate in terms of what countries people come from. We choose the quantity and quality of people that we want, and that, I think, has the overwhelming support of the British people.
Yourself.
We do
have one problem with where British workers struggle to find work, and that is where employment agencies are only taking migrant workers because they know they can illegally pay them under the minimum wage. And that is one thing that we can do immediately, is to have greater enforcement of the minimum wage.
Absolutely.
Make sure that no agencies are just taking people who struggle with English as a second language. That's the only major change that I would make at the moment. And we are in the European Union. But we have lots of people go to Europe and live in the Dordogne or live in Marbella, and they come. Polish people come here, work very hard, and go back to Poland.
But what we can't do with government policy here is influence the oncoming disaster in Italy, Spain. If you look at youth unemployment rates, it's pretty much a disaster now. And the Eurozone is so serious. I would say that the figures that you've seen today, you ain't seen nothing yet, because things are so bad.
That is why
bad in southern Europe.
That is why we need possibly an emergency break.
I've got one final question for you, Nigel Farage. And the Douglas Carswell, your first MP, UKIP MP in Parliament, when presented with the idea that there should be different rules for benefits for those coming to this country to those who live here, he said, I couldn't think of anything worse than creating a two-tier system. It would put us on a par with a Gulf state.
Well, Douglas is one of the strongest advocates for an Australian-style point system, and if you have the right numbers of people and you have the right quality of people, you would not need to have this debate about benefits that Mr Cameron will have tomorrow.
Now, of course, Nigel does say that the Eurozone, it could be going into yet another recession, and we know that people, it's part of our national narrative. It's part of, our story as a country is an island story. It's also a continental story. We've always we've always benefited economically, socially.
Briefly, I'm afraid.
But my point is this: if the Eurozone does go into another crisis, then it might be the case that the government needs to look at new policies such as an emergency break. We'll have to wait and see whether that is in the Prime Minister's speech.
Good luck in getting that through, Mrs Merkel. Come back and tell us when you've done it. We need to leave it there. Thank you very much.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.